Hey guys, welcome back for another reaction. Today I'll be reacting to Portugal Culture Shock as an American. Let's get into this.
4 years in Portugal, and I still get blindsided by culture shock every single day.
Oh, let's see what they are.
Since YouTube decided to take my first video down, here we go again. Apparently, Portuguese culture is not suitable for global audiences. So here goes nothing.
Really?
According to my Portuguese buddy Rico, Portugal has a special talent. If there's no inconvenience, they'll invent one. Hola Malta, this is some guy named Dave in Portugal, and I've been living here for almost 4 years.
That's
And
a
to
long
all the
time.
haters who thought I wouldn't last, guess what? I'm still here. But before
That's
we begin,
cool.
I want to dedicate this episode to my stepbrother Evan, who sadly passed away last week. This video is for him in loving memory, and may his warm smile live on always. Surprisingly, over the last year, my YouTube audience has shifted from mostly Americans to mostly Portuguese. So, obrigado do fundo do coração. If you want to see some of my favorite places in Portugal, make sure to follow me on Instagram at Dave in Portugal. Now let's stop messing around and get right into it. Portugal's summer parties never end. In Portugal, they party hard all summer long. Just when you're
Really?
trying to fall asleep, pimba,
Oh
fireworks everywhere.
gosh.
So many, in fact, the first time I was here, I genuinely thought World War III had kicked off. But summer is when Portugal really comes alive. Every place takes its turn. From the biggest cities to the smallest villages, each one hosting its own summer festa. And of course, no
That sounds
Portuguese summer
fun.
would be complete without the Pimba King himself, Pimba Kairos, blessing us with his poetry. His lyrics are classic, like singing about parking his car in a recently divorced widow's garage. Then he hits you with lines like, I put the car in, take the car out, whenever I want. What a tight little garage, what a sweet woman. You know, the real
Interesting.
family-friendly material. It all kicks off in June with Santos Populares in Lisbon and then rolls up to Porto. By August, most Portuguese take the entire month off. Local shops close, and people living elsewhere
Oh my
in Europe
gosh.
or around the rest of the
It's
world
hardcore.
come home to celebrate with their family. This is the best time to experience the soul of Portugal. Because if you
Yeah,
come
I
in
bet it would
winter,
be fun.
people are usually a little grumpy and fully in hibernation mode.
The infinite maybe.
In Portugal, answers don't always come with an expiration date. One thing you learn pretty quick living here is that you don't always get a clear answer. You can be kept waiting very politely forever
For
until you
real?
finally push back and force a decision. There's rarely a firm yes and almost never a direct no. Instead, you're placed in a kind of polite holding pattern. And the interesting part is, this can go on indefinitely. Days, weeks, and sometimes long enough that you forget even what you were waiting for in the first place. But I don't think it's avoidance in a rude way. I think it's more about not wanting to disappoint, not wanting to create conflict, and not wanting to shut the
I
door.
guess.
So instead of saying no, the answer is just always open, forever. But here's the thing. Portugal runs a lot on relationships. Once you know the right people and they trust you and feel comfortable with you, things suddenly start moving.
Oh yeah.
You learn pretty quickly that you sometimes have to finesse the system a little, not by being pushy, but by being present, patient, and persistent. If you need clarity in Portugal, you usually have to ask for it, politely, firmly, and sometimes more than once. And let me tell you this,
Interesting.
the moment you lose politeness or respect, those doors don't slowly close, they slam shut.
Ouch.
Spatial awareness in Portugal is, let's just call it optional. You have to be ready for anything. People cutting diagonally across a crowd like they're solving a maze. Someone stopping in the doorway of an exit to dig through their purse. And sometimes, my
What?
personal favorite, someone will just stop their car in the middle of the road and pop into the pharmacy. The elderly here are
Oh my
especially talented
gosh.
at that. But honestly, it barely phases me anymore. Sidewalk parking, cars parked diagonally across multiple spaces, and my
What?
favorite move of all, blocking another car completely until someone honks. Because yes, There's actually an unspoken Portuguese
Is this
system
for
where
real?
you block a car and the other person knows to honk so you can come out and move it. Totally normal here. But the farther east you go in Eastern Europe and especially all the way into Asia, it gets way more intense. So Portugal sits somewhere in the middle of this. And honestly, it's
Okay.
almost charming.
Yeah, that is really shocking and really interesting. But yeah, I've been to a lot of Asian countries and I'm sure it's more intense than in Portugal, right? Because he mentioned that Portugal is in the middle. So, okay, I think I'm getting that.
If you don't understand restaurant hours in Portugal, you will get hangry. Where most first timers mess up is the danger zone between 3 and 7 p.m. Outside of big cities like
Oh,
Lisbon and Porto, many restaurants close after lunch around 3 p.m. and don't reopen for dinner
yeah, I
until
see
7. And
those.
yes, even after years here, I still sometimes show up during this window, doors locked, lights off, stomach empty. But don't worry, there's a solution.
Sad.
You just have to know where food still exists at this hour. Enter the snack bar. These places serve what's called a
Snack
lunch.
bar,
And no, that's
okay.
not lunch. It's more like an afternoon snack. For the Portuguese, that usually means a pastel de nata or something savory
Those
like a
look
riso or
good.
a croquette. And you can always hit any grocery store and grab ready-made food from the cafe or to-go section. Learn to eat like a Portuguese and you'll never go hungry again. Dá-lhe. One of the things that's helped me the
Yeah, it's actually a good tip, and that's one thing I do when restaurants are closed. I just hit the groceries and get food from there, like some snack, and then just eat later when they're open. Or if not, I'll just sleep hungry, I guess.
most with culture shock here has honestly been learning Portuguese. It changes everything. How people interact with you, how patient they are, and how much connected you feel day to day. I've been learning with my friend Anita, who put together a really solid European Portuguese course from beginner all the way to advanced. She even
Wow.
has some options for tourists just visiting and even for kids. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check it out.
Kind people,
If you know
quiet.
Portugal, you know there's a quiet sense of national pessimism. As the Portuguese say, é o que é. It means it is what it is. Sometimes it can feel
Oh,
like people don't believe improvement is possible. And there's a mild cynicism towards politics and institutions, which is completely normal here. And honestly, it's part of how people bond with each other here. When I first arrived in Portugal, being the bubbly American that I am, I'd walk into places and talking about how beautiful the day was. And people would look at me a bit strange. After some time integrating,
I
I learned to
bet.
respond more like a local. When people ask how I'm doing, I now say, vai se andando, which roughly translates to just getting by. And that response is totally normal here. But in the US, someone
Really?
might hear that and wonder if you're okay or if you need help. But in Portugal, this constant
Yeah.
low level melancholy is simply a part of everyday life here. Which brings us to one of the most famous Portuguese words, saudade. It's often
Saudade?
described as a deep longing for something, but many Portuguese will tell you
Ah.
there's no true English translation.
Yeah, in the US, they'll definitely think you're sick in the head if you just say those stuff. But yeah, good to know that there's actually other term in other country when they ask you how are you. Okay.
The directness in Portugal can definitely catch you off guard. At times, it can even make you feel a little self conscious. But it's very common here for people to comment on your weight. They'll casually tell you that you've gained a little weight
Really?
or that you're too thin and you need to eat more. For me, it doesn't bother me as much because I understand it usually comes from a place of someone noticing you and trying to show care. It's almost
Yeah, I
always said
guess.
very casually, not to shame, and usually followed immediately by food being offered. And it's not just weight, your relationship status is also fair game. You might hear things like, Como é que ninguém te agarrou ainda? These comments are usually delivered with a smile and no bad intentions. But they perfectly highlight a cultural contrast in Portugal. People can be very blunt about personal topics, yet surprisingly indirect socially, avoiding confrontation.
Interesting. Yeah, about being too direct, in the US, you can't really do that because if you call someone fat, you're gonna be in a bad situation. Like, that's actually rude. But sometimes I think about it and I think it's okay to point out that sometimes you can be more conscious about your body, so you'll actually exercise. But I don't know. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. So I don't know. I think it just depends on people. Smooth when you say that stuff. Yeah.
In Portugal, driving can feel sometimes a little interpretive. Taking a deep breath to talk about this one. On the highway, there are really only two speeds: 40 kilometers under the limit or 40 kilometers over it. And there's really no in
Oh,
between.
really?
And there are speed cameras in Portugal, but thanks to navigation apps like Waze, people just know where to slow down and then speed up 5 seconds later.
Oh
You'll
my
get
gosh.
tailgated so closely, it feels like someone is trying to run you off the road. People will change lanes at the very last second, often without using a
What?
blinker, with almost no margin
Oh
for
my
error.
gosh. That's
But there is one
crazy.
law the Portuguese will absolutely not break: the sacred solid white line. It's almost as if
That's
Nossa Senhora de
good.
Fatima drew it herself. Because if you cross it, even by accident, other drivers will flash their lights or honk at you like you've committed one of the seven deadly sins. Driving 100 kilometers an hour through a residential neighborhood, no problem. Accidentally crossing the solid white line
What?
because you missed your exit, end of the world. And to be fair, there's a reason for that. Crossing a solid white line is a serious, expensive fine here. And if a police officer sees you do it, you will get pulled over. But after almost 4 years in Portugal, I've gotten mostly used to the driving style. And when I go back to the US, it feels like
Yeah,
a completely
interesting.
different kind of chaos. Neither one is better, just different. But I honestly prefer driving in Portugal more now. And those are just a few of the culture shocks I've experienced in Portugal, even after almost 4 years here. In this episode, I wanted to go a little deeper than the usual surface level observations, like the slower pace of life or being able to drink a beer on the street. Every culture has its own quirks, and that's part of what makes the
Yeah.
experience so interesting. I talk about these things not to point out flaws, but to bring awareness to the culture you're visiting, so you can better understand it and be prepared for it. If you do come to Portugal, try to leave it better than you found it. Learn a little bit of Portuguese because trust me, it goes a long way. If you want to see more videos about Portugal,
That was a real video, and I can say that those things are actually shocking. And it's interesting to learn more about this country. So, yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.